Hello, and welcome to Back Through the Lens, where two film school friends talk about movies through the haze of nostalgia, the good, the bad, and the ones that aren't quite how we remember them. I'm your host, Rachel, and with me is my co host, Joe. Today's episode is Jaws.
It's the 4th of July. We can only think about two things: grilling hot dogs and watching fireworks. And watching movies. Okay, so three things. Some films centered around America's birthday are military based, often invoking a sense of patriotic pride. Others involve threats that damper our holiday celebrations, usually having explosions that you don't need to crane your neck to see. However you celebrate, make sure you do it safely. Don't blow off any fingers and stay out of the water.
Happy 4th of July!
Happy birthday, America.
Sure.
Sure. Take that,
uh,
Britain.
Take that, Britain. Let's talk about sharks.
Yeah. America's sharks. The great red, white, and blue sharks. What?
What?
I don't know. It fits in there somewhere.
So, do you usually celebrate Independence Day with sharks?
Oh, all the time. Yeah. It's
Yeah.
great. No, typically if there's someone hosting something and we get invited to it, we like to go during the day, eat your typical, grilling food. Your hot dogs and hamburgers are, I'm a very simple man. I love those, but anything else, also, house. And we like to come home at night. Our dogs, mostly the little one, if fireworks go off or celebratory gunshots, unfortunately, we like to keep them kind of sane. Often going in the basement, we'll play darts, maybe play some music or something to distract them. I don't know. Fireworks are cool and all, but you go to enough Friday night baseball games, you get fireworks like almost weekly if you wanted to. So,
Yeah, that's a good point. I felt like fireworks were like such a rare thing when I was a kid, but now I can kind of take them or leave them.
yeah, same.
Yeah, we usually for the 4th of July, the actual 4th of July, we're usually just hanging out at home. We'll usually do something like grill hot dogs because my kid loves like a hot dog, watermelon, potato salad kind of thing out eaten outside, has to be outside.
Hmm.
He would eat an entire watermelon himself if we let him. But lately we've been going to our friends' parents' neighborhood because they do their own fireworks, usually like the weekend before the 4th, but they'll go and have a cookout and we all hang out and my son gets to play with everyone else's kids and then we go ride golf carts to the lake in their neighborhood and watch fireworks.
Any lake sharks out there?
If there are, maybe no one's gotten close enough yet.
This is good. This is good. You come closer to kind of celebrating with Jaws than I guess I do.
Yeah, it's a good.
I mean, I watched the movie, but
I mean, yeah.
yeah.
My husband, every 4th of July, will wake up and turn to me and say, "Welcome to Earth."
Listen, as awesome as that is not the movie we're talking about today. That is one of two that I find appropriate 4th of July movies. I'm not even going to say the other name for it. But today, we are talking about Jaws, directed by Steven Spielberg, released June 20th, 1975, a whopping PG rating, and it was based off the book Jaws by Peter Benchley, who also wrote, co-wrote, had to try to help a little bit on the screenplay. We'll get into that a little bit later.
We'll
Yeah.
also get into that PG rating a little bit later.
Yeah. But if you haven't seen Jaws and you want to know what we're talking about to follow along, Amity Island, a quiet New England tourist town, is gearing up for its biggest and busiest holiday weekends of the year, 4th of July. But one invited guest came early and with a healthy appetite. Police Chief Brody is charged with ridding the beach of this man-eating shark in time for the mayor to still throw Amity's big bash, but the shark seems to have plans of overstaying its welcome. With the help of a marine biologist, an old grumpy ship captain with shark revenge in his heart, the three of them venture out into the ocean for a boys' fishing trip that they'll never forget.
That they'll never forget and they might not ever return from.
Well, two of them
We'll
won't
get into
forget.
that too.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, two of them won't forget. Unless they're so traumatized, they do. Uh, I can't quite remember the first time I saw Jaws. I know I didn't sit down and watch the entire movie until I was older, and I realized it was actually one of those, you know, important movies that you should see, or like it's always on lists of the best movies of all time and whatever. I always thought it was just a cheesy monster movie kind of a thing, but in my defense, I feel like all the Jaws movies were always playing on like TNT or USA, whatever those channels always were. And I would see clips here and there of the original Jaws. What is it? Two, three, and four.
Yeah.
Jaws. Jaws Revenge is the fourth one.
Yes.
It's not actually called Jaws 4. Okay. But I would see clips of all of those all the time, and I'd maybe sit and watch a little bit, and then I'd be like, well, this is dumb, and go on to something else. So Jaws was never something I really thought about sitting down to watch until I was told that it was a good movie.
Yeah, I think mine's pretty similar. I feel like older relatives were talking about it. I think my mom had mentioned seeing it and it kind of kept her out of the water for a while, freaked her out. And I got into horror kind of at a young age, maybe younger than I should have, movies and books and whatnot. And watching it kind of growing up, I was like, I don't get it. It's not that scary. Well, there's some good scares, but overall, it was more tense than like a horror movie. Revisited a few years later, I'm still pretty young, and I remember watching a marathon on I think USA. Just like stayed up all night on the couch bed, just popcorn and soda and a bunch of sharks. And I guess it was the epiphany of like watching two, three, and four that aren't horrible. Maybe four's not that great, but comparatively to Jaws proper, I was like, huh. And then a rewatch even older, I was like, okay, this is better than I remember. This is good. It's not supposed to be scary in the aspect I thought as a kid when I was looking for horror
Hmm.
movies to watch. It's more
Hmm.
tense. And yeah, it's just really good as far as like a piece of cinema.
Hmm. Definitely.
Okay, so before we dive deep into this movie, some fun facts. Apparently, this is the first major motion picture to be shot out on the ocean. I'm sure there's other things filmed, but I think using that verbiage, major motion picture, someone like Universal with money in their pockets and a hope and a prayer, I guess. And because of that, on the open ocean, they had some production issues, which caused it to go over schedule and over budget. Some of these issues were Bruce 1, 2, and 3, which is what we called the Sharks. By we, I mean Steven Spielberg and crew. I don't know why I put myself in there.
Well, now it's we because we're discussing Bruce.
Fair enough.
It's fine. We're part of this too.
Okay, that's good. But yeah, so they had these mechanical sharks and they tested them and they worked fine, but they they tested them in regular water and then they took them to the ocean, which is chock full of salt. And I think that caused a lot of issues. So again, more delay, more production issues, more budget, more money.
Yeah, I can't help feeling like everything you read about this, the making of this movie, they had so many problems and so many, I mean, so many issues with the shark alone, right? That we now know that's part of why we don't see a lot of the shark, but that turned into such great tension and such great storytelling is the right word. But their issues with Bruce made the movie what it is,
Hmm.
that we know the shark's around. We don't necessarily see it. We only see little bits of it until the very end. And I can't help feeling like, despite Steven Spielberg obviously being like this great celebrated director, that Jaws was almost just this happy accident that a lot of things went wrong that ended up making it the movie that it is,
Oh
which
yeah,
was not the intended final product.
right. But it definitely worked out in our favor.
Yes. Yeah, because I also think that's a big reason why, in my opinion, Jaws stands out from, I don't want to say similar movies exactly, because I feel like when you think about killer animal movies, they're usually schlocky B movies or whatever. But part of the reason Jaws works so well is because you don't see the
Hmm.
animal that much.
Yeah.
You just see the aftermath.
It works because of the setting too, though, and of the villain. It was an open ocean and a shark, which can disappear. And I think that makes it scarier. So like oceans are scary because you can only see like 6 feet down and it's black and abysmal and terrifying.
Hmm. Yeah, speaking of terrifying, actually, have you ever seen pictures of like the fish that live in the deepest parts of the ocean?
Yeah, they're horrible.
They're absolutely terrifying. I think scarier than a shark, personally.
Yeah, and you can't see that shit. So,
No, you have no idea what's there. There's no way to know.
nope.
Nope. Could be anything. All right. Well, speaking of our troubled production, I guess, we'll get into a little bit of how this all came to be, how we got to Steven Spielberg shooting with a broken shark in the middle of the ocean. Two producers at Universal, Richard D. Zanuck and David Brown, heard about the book Jaws and bought the rights before it was even published.
This sounds so familiar. I feel like we've talked about something similar already.
Similar in so many ways.
Yeah, it's funny how I knew both of these were based off of books, this and Jurassic Park from previous episode, obviously, but I never knew like the books had a little bit of fame preceding them, so much so that Universal, both times, purchased the rights to film before the books hit the shelf. And that's kind of cool to me.
Yeah, I guess my impression was always that they would buy the rights to a hit book.
Right.
Apparently, one of these producers at the time was married to an editor for Cosmopolitan magazine. And I thought that was funny too, because the whole reason he heard about Jaws was from a little write up in Cosmo saying this would probably make a good movie. And just,
Hmm.
I guess it was one of those articles like, here are some books you should look out for this year. It just doesn't seem like the kind of book that would be recommended by Cosmo, but like, what do I know?
Maybe Cosmo in 1975 was a lot different.
Who knows?
Also, kudos to that editor because good pick.
Yeah, really. So, after they have the rights to this book, they originally hired a director named Dick Richards.
Oh, what? I'm sorry. Dick Richards.
Yeah,
Dick is his name.
I know.
Okay. Sorry, I had to be a child for a second.
No, it's
Continue.
okay. But this is also a pet peeve of mine when like your last name is something that could also be a first name and your parents just give you the same first name as well. Like I personally just hate it. Like you could have picked any other name.
Right. I mean, because Dick, for
Anything.
some reason, as I made the joke about just now, is short for Richard. So his real name is Richard Richards.
Yeah, I would assume so.
Yeah, or Dick Dix. I like that one better. That should have been his
Jeez.
directing name. Might have been in a different kind of movie though. So,
I was just gonna say, what kind of movies would he have been making with that kind of name?
you know what?
Um,
Let's talk about sharks again.
yeah, okay. So, well, first of all, we're gonna talk about Dick Richards for just one more minute. This is actually why he got fired from Jaws because this man couldn't talk about sharks.
Oh,
Uh, in every meeting they had, every time they were talking about the screenplay, the shooting, whatever, he kept calling the shark a whale. And the producers got so fed up with this, they yelled at him one day that they were not making Moby Dick and that they would not make this movie with someone who couldn't tell the difference between a shark and a whale.
I like this stance on know your animals or get a new job.
I just thought this was like the funniest story because it's such a strange mistake. Like it's sort of innocuous in a way, but then at the same time, it's like, how could you? It's you're basically making a shark movie. How did you mess this up so bad?
Yeah, I want to know like, was he just dumb? Did he not care? Was he being like a prick? Was he being a dick because he kept like calling like the shark a whale? Like it's up. It almost seems like he didn't care what he was doing. I don't know. I wasn't there obviously, but It's such a weird thing to get fired from a movie from. And then unfortunately for him, like it became such a big hit.
Well, right. And that's what I keep thinking. He made this stupid mistake, but apparently he constantly made the same stupid mistake, and it possibly cost him big time career-wise.
To be fair, I've never heard of this man before, so I don't want to like not give Spielberg the credit Spielberg is for making Jaws what it is also because
Right.
I mean, yes, good break for him on his like second, third, fourth movie, whatever this is, but it's still also Spielberg.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's what I was going to say too. Who knows what kind of movie it would have turned into with a different director and without all their happy accidents.
Right.
But they also brought our author, is it Peter Benchley? He wrote the first draft of the screenplay, but there were so many rewrites even before Spielberg was attached to it. It kind of sounded like Benchley wrote like one pass of the screenplay and kind of threw it at the producers and was like, I'm not a screenwriter, fix this. And to be fair to him, it sounds like there were a lot of like subplots that are in the novel that eventually got cut out just to give the movie a better focus. And it is an entirely different medium. So I can understand why he was struggling, but it really sounded like even he was not happy with it. And there's this whole list of people who, there's an official co-writer, but there's a whole list of people that they approached to help with it that turned it down, that helped here and there but didn't want credit. There's even three different people who take credit for one very big monologue, which we will get to. So it's this weird hodgepodge of screenwriters and playwrights that they approached, plus their official co-writer, plus this author.
That is a menagerie of writers there.
And I feel like it's safe to say, usually when this is the situation, it does not turn into a good movie.
Right. Well, luckily for the cast and crew, they had a bunch of problems. They had to rewrite it on the fly. So,
Yeah, that's the other thing. On top of all of this, I believe it was Richard Dreyfuss that said every day or that they started the shoot without a script, without a shark, without even all the main parts cast. But he said that every day at dinner, they would be rewriting, or at least Spielberg would be rewriting the scenes for the next day's shoot.
that's crazy.
Like, it's really insane that this turned out to be such a classic and is considered so well made because it sounds like a mess.
Oh, it's a big mess.
Yeah.
Big bloody mess.
Yep. But the camera caught all the good parts.
Yeah. One more Dick's comment here. I just find it funny the guy gets fired because of the whale situation, right? And they are yelling at about it's not Moby Dick. There's a lot of parallels that I'm sure we'll make about Quint and Ahab, right?
Hmm.
But then also Quint's boat is called the Orca. And I know like it makes sense for the film because
Hmm.
killer whales usually attack sharks,
Yes.
but it's just a lot of like other whale kind of things going on with this character. And it's like this guy got fired because he couldn't get sharks and whales straight.
Yeah, there are so many little references to Moby Dick. And then, yeah, this guy lost his job because of saying the word whale.
Yeah,
Yeah, one last point about that. When I was trying to explain to my son, that I was watching this movie, it's about a shark that attacks people. It's kind of scary, whatever. So maybe you don't want to be in the room for this one. And he said, You mean a killer whale? You mean an orca? And I was like, No, it's literally a shark. And he's like, Well, a lot of people confuse killer whales with sharks and yada yada. And was like, kind of giving me all the animal facts about orcas. And I was like, no, no, a great white shark. And I realized that he doesn't know as much about sharks or like great whites. And I feel like they were such a pop culture thing when we were kids.
oh yeah,
I don't know how to explain this because we also had like Free Willy and Shamu, like SeaWorld was a big thing, especially
yeah.
If you didn't know, there was a SeaWorld in Ohio
Yeah,
near where we live, which is completely random, but killer whales were also like a big thing when we were kids. But
they were like on the friendly side, like
well, yes. But I also
based
feel
on
like
SeaWorld and Free Willy, like you mentioned.
yes, but I also feel like great whites were such a thing. And I don't know why, because it's not like Jaws came out when we were kids, but I just feel like we had more sharks in like popular culture than my kid does now. And it made me realize this when he didn't even really understand what a great white was when I was trying to explain this movie to him.
Yeah, I can't really fully remember why there was a lot of great white.
Was it because of Shark Week? Was that a big thing when
I
we
don't
were?
I don't think it's start. I don't know. I don't know what year they are in Shark Week, but I do remember a lot of great white. I just remember watching a lot of what is now like Animal Planet, Nat Geo. I think it was something different. There were specials. My grandmother, the one that didn't take me to Jurassic Park, we filmed a lot of or filmed. We filmed it ourselves. She would have taped it, the specials, like all these Predator series. I was really into Predators as a kid, big cats, wolves, sharks, stuff like that. That's how I remember like sharks from those specials on TV.
Hmm.
But yeah, I would if that was my son, if I had a son, he's being swarmy with me. I'd be like, listen, go to your room. It's not a damn whale. Or I wouldn't tell him how scary it is and make him watch it and terrify him. Like, see, sharks
Um,
are dangerous. Get lippy with me again, son.
you, you would just fire him from the movie because you're talking about whales.
Yeah, what is? Come on, Peter.
No, it was Dick.
Oh yeah, Peter's author. Come on, Dick.
We haven't even started talking about the movie, really. Okay.
So Jaws the movie.
So Jaws the movie.
I decided to watch the trailer because it was an option to do so on Blu-ray, and I mostly because I don't think I've ever seen a trailer for Jaws before because it came out before I was born. I wouldn't have seen it in a theater as a preview to another movie because that doesn't make sense. I was very curious to see like how much they showed, what they showed, if anything. And it was pretty, I kind of thought it was funny. Like it wasn't humorous. It wasn't supposed to be like a comedy, obviously, but it was just, it starts with a lot of underwater things, pretty much like the whole beginning. It's
Mhm.
obviously cut quicker for a trailer, but you see a lot of it, her like splashing around and all that good stuff. And then there's like that very 70s, like really deep movie voice.
Mhm.
And I try to type it as fast as I could. I don't think it's these are verbatim here, but like some of the lines in this trailer was like, "It's like the devil with jaws." So they're basically talking about how evil the shark is. So again, like if I would have seen this as a kid, I would have been like so let down that it's not actually horror. It's not a possessed shark, as far as we know. I guess we didn't get to talk to him, and we just blew him up. They
It's
do show,
Devil with Jaws.
yeah.
It's not scary enough just being this big creature with like sharp teeth that's
So they're
like
making out
going
this
to
like
eat
he's a
you.
very like he's a bad guy. Like he's the villain, which we know, but like almost like
Like they had to give him a personality or something.
yeah, yeah. They do show a lot of the boat stuff in the
Okay.
trailer, which I was surprised. And again, another fun line towards the end. None of man's concepts of evil compares to that of Jaws. And then at the very end, it was like the still of the water, and it
Mhm.
was like, see before you go swimming. No, thank you, sir. I rather not.
Yep. God, that's
So
so over the top.
yeah.
Yeah, and the thing is, like, I could imagine it because it's an animal that we know about. Not necessarily an animal that regularly attacks people, but it's not like some brand new creature they developed for this movie.
Yeah, they invented a shark for
It's a
this movie.
shark. Oh my God, that's so funny. I expected this to be cheesy because I feel like obviously older trailers tend to be really cheesy, but this one exceeded my expectations. So
Oh
thank
yeah.
you.
It was it was great. It had a lot of jaws in it.
Jeez.
Yeah, he said it weird every time.
Do they even say the word Jaws in the movie? Like probably not.
Didn't have closed caption on. They didn't. If they did, they didn't like refer to the shark as Jaws. Like
Well, right. It's
in the
not like they
name.
named him. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe Dreyfus mentions it when he's being like scientific and measuring and looking for wounds or whatever, but not in that way. No.
That was my thought that maybe they say the word in passing, referring to like body parts of a shark.
Right.
Yeah. Oh, wow. That's great. I'm gonna go watch that trailer. I'm gonna go look it up when we're done with this.
Nice.
Okay. So, do we want to talk about our opening scene a little bit?
Absolutely.
Okay. I just want to say right off the bat, watching this scene, it's like hilarious to me that this is PG.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
But
PG-13 wasn't invented yet. So it's what 84 is about as old as we are. Taking that fact away. So like there was no PG-13 yet. It's
yes.
it's and obviously it exists because there needs to be something in between, as we see in a good handful of Spielberg movies. This notwithstanding,
Yep.
actually some of my favorite PG movies are should not be PG. This Poltergeist, Gremlins. They're
Not Spielberg, but one of my friend's dads wanted to show her kids American Graffiti when they were pretty young, like
hmm
6 and 4 maybe.
yeah,
And he's like, "What? It's PG." And I was like, "Yeah, it's only PG because PG-13 wasn't invented yet."
right. And then I believe Temple of Doom, where they rip a man's heart out. They're
Hmm.
like, you know what? We need another rating system. This is a little too much, Steven.
Yeah.
All that being said, though, how do these like not get pushed into the R stratosphere here?
Yeah, that's what surprised me. And like again, you know, other people can make their own decisions for their kids, whatever. But like for me, I I told my son like he was going to be scared if he sat and watched this whole thing with me, like because I know him. I know where the jump scares are. I know what he would find too creepy. Just in general, like knowing people are getting eaten by sharks and the I guess you could argue there's not too much blood, but there's enough. I'm surprised they didn't push it to R, especially just assuming back then maybe people were more conservative about things.
Right. I mean, you kind of did explain why it could be PG. You explained it. You parentally guided your child about the possibilities of having nightmares about not whales attacking people.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It's a coin toss, I suppose, but yeah. If it was today, it'd probably be PG-13.
Yeah, absolutely. And there are a lot of stories that I saw about them cutting out more blood, more body parts, whatever, not making the attacks as not showing the attacks as much, like making it more suggestive in order to avoid the R rating, which I guess I understand, but I still feel like I don't know. Just like I said, even this opening scene, I'm just surprised it didn't
See,
get
this
I mean,
isn't
this
this.
woman's naked in the opening scene too.
Well, hold on. Yes, yes. But I was gonna say, like, out of all the attacks, this is the like least graphic.
I understand that.
My notes on this one. First of all, she's naked. You don't see anything, as far as I could see. Like she's silhouetted. It's nighttime. Again, like the horror and the attacks, it's a lot of suggestion. But then, like, it's almost kind of comical how she gets attacked. I feel like the shark is toying with her because she keeps like bobbing up and down. As we see later, how huge the shark is. I feel like it would have been like a one bite deal, or like just drag her down and that's it. And she's thrashing around, going left, going right, going left, hanging onto a buoy. There's no blood. I don't remember seeing
Hmm.
blood in this, and maybe because it was too dark. And I think that's just part of the setup. Like we're we don't want to reveal how big this shark is, I suppose.
Hmm.
Maybe if they would have in another cut had more gore right away, they would have jumped right to R 'cause it's like the first 5 minutes. So a lot of things are still being implied here, I guess.
That's true. Hmm.
But when Alex, I don't want to jump ahead too much, but there's a lot of blood there.
Yes. Yeah, we'll get to everything else is a lot bloodier than this opening. But ratings aside, this is such an effective opening scene. Like, we have our monster, but still just kind of the suggestion of it. We know something's there, we don't see it. I love the part where she finally goes under and you're just looking at this calm ocean. Like you said, part of the reason it's so scary is because the ocean is kind of seemingly endless and dark and you don't know what's under there. And
Hmm.
a girl just died violently, and within an instant, you would never know. And that's part of what is so scary
Oh yeah.
because you could never find out what happened to her in theory. Like, she might never wash up. She does eventually, parts of her anyway, but
Yeah.
she might not. And then also the fact that, there technically was a person with her.
Hmm.
There was a guy she was going to go skinny dipping with, right? And
Yeah, oh
he
yeah.
passes out drunk, I believe.
Yeah, they show all these, I'm assuming teens, early 20 people like smoking and drinking around a campfire on the beach.
Yeah.
So it's like a public safety announcement. No, don't drink and dive.
But in her case, you could argue she was using the buddy system or whatever, and that still didn't matter.
That's not what was going to happen there, but sure. Yeah, yeah, he conked right out on the shore. So
Yep.
good job, buddy.
Yep.
I want to
But
point out though, even before this happens, though, just as the credits are rolling, we're already in the shark's point of view. That's the first thing we actually see is we're underwater and we
mhm.
hear the score right away. Not the kind of more famous part of the score when it gets
Mhm.
faster and higher, but you were getting those low notes, the slow like doo doo, and like it's like right away we're associating underwater with these, these
Mhm.
musical notes.
Yep. This is such a random movie connection, but have you ever seen The Holiday with like Jack
Oh,
Black?
yes.
Yeah. He plays a music or a
Hmm.
film composer,
Yeah.
yeah, in that. And when he's explaining all these famous scores to Kate Winslet's character, he's like, two notes and you have a villain. And that's what I keep thinking of now when I watch Jaws.
Don't don't you dare ruin Jaws with a holiday.
How dare you? I love The Holiday.
You had briefly mentioned like the woman that got attacked and she might
Hmm.
never be found unless her parts or whatnot got washed ashore.
Hmm.
We actually get to see a little bit of that the next morning. They inform Brody, I believe, that there's been an attack. I think actually the drunk guy goes and gets him or whatever. And we see another officer that's not the chief, so he's like in actual uniform, like kind of like playing in the sand almost, childlike. Like he is definitely disturbed by what he found. He's looking away from it. We see all we get to see from this woman, the remains, is like part of her head, just like the crown of her head, maybe like part of an eye, I don't know, and like this hand and arm. And I think the part that like creeped me out is just crabs crawling all over her, like
Hmm.
on the feast on the remains. So another example of like how our imagination is scarier.
Hmm.
I had read that Spielberg did not like the look of the prosthetic arm. So this is actually a real person. This is a crew member they buried in sand.
Jeez.
So
Hope
then,
that crew member got compensated.
yeah, with like crabs or something, like they're all over. That's the part. I was like, how do you? Whew, she must not be afraid of anything. That would freak me out.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned Brody. He's our chief of police, right? He had just moved to Amity Island.
Yeah,
I want to say
from New York.
okay. I want to say Boston for some reason. But he's scared of water.
So why not move to an island?
Poor guy probably thought this would be a much easier gig than New York City.
I would imagine, yes.
Yeah. I had read that our potential actors for Brody were Robert Duvall and Charlton Heston.
I mean, I could kind of see it if it were to have happened. They're big then. I also think Duvall might have been looking for, once he didn't get this role, Quint, and Spielberg said he was too young.
Mm,
And then I believe Spielberg thought Heston was kind of too big for this movie. Not so much of like, big name draw, which they probably could have used, but the movies he was putting out at the time, he was so heroic, always
hmm
defeating every odd that was put in front of him. And from what I understand, Spielberg didn't want that presence on screen. He didn't want the audience to know whether the shark wins or not.
mm. Okay, yeah. So basically, having Charlton Heston on screen would indicate that Charlton Heston will defeat the shark.
Yeah, he is the golden hero.
Yeah.
This did not sit well with Heston, and he kind
hmm
of was throughout the years have talked trash about Spielberg, turned down other roles for his films. I think he's all right. He did okay
Yeah.
for a while.
I was gonna say, I think Steven Spielberg's doing okay, so
Yeah,
no harm there.
no,
I do like after, we find this, well, I shouldn't say body, I guess, these remains, Brody automatically springs into action and he's asking this other cop, where do we keep the beach closed signs? And the cop says, we never had any. So not only have never dealt with anything like this, apparently never even had a reason to close the beach generally, I guess.
yeah, I guess not. Yeah,
No riptides or hurricanes or whatever. I don't know. Pretty charmed little town. I believe it's the mayor who comes in and tells Brody, like, Amity is a summer town. We need summer dollars, indicating that they cannot close the beach for economic reasons.
right.
Um, and I do understand this, especially a small town like this probably is where they get a lot of their revenue. However, couldn't help thinking about COVID and lockdowns and like the whole public safety versus economy thing. And it's just weird how, and maybe because, you and I have somewhat recently lived through the pandemic and some of it's still with us. Like, I feel like I think about it a lot in some of these movies we've been watching, but also it just could be like recency bias on my part.
I mean, maybe a little bit of both. Why not?
Yeah.
It, yeah, and for the time too, it does seem extreme for the mayor. I mean, there is a brand new cop, chief police.
hmm
So he's like unfamiliar maybe with what's going on. At one point, when he's kind of giving the spiel of the summer dollars, the coroner or whoever it is like, "Well, it was a boating accident." And Brody's like, "No, it was a. You said it was a shark accident. Can you swear by this?" He's like, "Yeah, totally a boating accident." It's like they're
hmm
kind of changing the story here to not close the beach, and they've never had anything like this before. So I get it. Like, why jump to the conclusion that the shark's going to attack five other people or whatever the case may be? So I get
Sure.
it, but maybe a little bit of precaution would have gone a long way.
Yeah, like obviously they're hoping that this isn't going to happen again. It's a one-off. But also I feel like a lot of what we see between this, the next shark attack, probably would not have happened if this was taking place now. I don't feel like anyone's even talking about this girl being missing aside from the people like the police who are obviously involved. The one guy who was on the beach with her when she disappeared, who,
Yeah,
didn't really see anything. But there's no cell phones, no social media, no cameras in everyone's pocket. Like this just, I feel like this would have never happened. Like they would have never been able to cover it up the way they did, knowing everything we have in modern times.
right. There was, I believe, an Egyptian resort that something very similar like this happened like 2015, 16, something like that. I could be getting
Okay.
the dates wrong, but yeah, very similar thing where there was an attack and they kind of try to cover it up, and it was a one-off isolated incident, and then a couple more happened. So they ended up closing down the beach, I believe, but I think a little too late, and then I think the shark just kind of meandered away. this is real life and not a film, so that kind of happens. But yeah, it kind of does show people still were kind of doing that. Like you don't want to
Hmm.
not only cause panic, I suppose, but then like it kind of tarnishes the name. Like, 10 years later, I'm like, oh yeah, I remember this resort in Egypt. They did the same thing, and I would never go there and
Yeah.
swim in the water because who knows?
Well, right, yeah.
So, like, I guess I get it from that point of view, but also don't be a dick.
I also couldn't help the characterization of the mayor really reminded me of the mayor in The Nightmare Before Christmas. Just the way he's like following our main character around and kind of,
Mm,
I don't know if harping is the right word, but the mayor in The Nightmare Before Christmas is always following Jack around and like, we should do this, we should do that. What about this? What about that? And I feel like this mayor is kind of doing the same thing in terms of like, what about the beach? What about the summer? What about the economy? Like, come on, we got to do
yeah.
something, but do this the way I'm asking you to do it. And I just, that little dichotomy of the mayor following our main character around, just like buzzing in his ear all the time.
Yeah, he's kind of like a little dog yipping at his heels.
Yeah. Maybe this is just how we characterize like evil politicians in our movies, and that's why.
It does kind of have like a cartoony villain vibe, like the mayor. He's like the human villain
Hmm. Hmm.
because he doesn't do what's right, what he's supposed to do, and causes more chaos and death. Even after
Hmm.
the next death, which we see like relatively shortly after all this happens, we get, was it Alex? Yeah.
Yes, Alex. Poor Alex. I've seen this enough and seen it recently enough that this wasn't the kind of rewatch where I've forgotten everything.
Okay.
So
Okay.
like I knew everything that was coming pretty clearly with this. And I was so struck by the introduction we have to Alex just having this like totally mundane conversation with his mom, right? And like doesn't mean anything, but this is like the last time his mom's ever gonna see him. And
Hmm.
like just the way, it's just a normal day, but we follow Alex out of the water talking to his mom. And then we follow Alex walking past Brody, who is now sitting at the beach, kind of keeping watch because he's the only one who really knows what's going on. And he's obviously on high alert. And I just love how the camera follows him, the little boy, just totally innocent, naive about anything that's going on, over to Brody, who's like very much on edge, like sitting in his chair, like watching everything that's going on. And I don't know, just this poor mom. But at the risk of sounding so freaking cheesy, like things that hit you different when you have kids. Like,
Yeah, I'm sure.
um,
Yeah, I can see
well,
that.
and also every time I see the mom, I just think of later when she slaps Brody, but we'll get to that. But this is also one of those points where I was telling my son, like, maybe you should leave the room soon. And it kind of turned into a joke because, eventually we hear the music and it was like, actually, that's an excellent warning sign for you to like get out of the room.
And it's cool too with the music because right before Alex gets attacked, there is a scene because you said Brody's on edge, and I love the shot. This random dude talking about some mundane stuff. I don't know, island life things, garbage pickup, the mail. I don't really remember,
Hmm.
but from Brody's perspective, it's over his shoulder. He's looking out to the ocean, and the girl screams and he like stands up, and now it's a reverse shot, and he's over seen over the other guy's shoulder. That's a really cool shot,
Hmm.
reverse shot. And we're all on high end because we know what's in there and we're seeing it from Brody's
Hmm.
point of view. And it's just kids playing around. Someone comes up underneath her and they're like playing chicken or whatever. She's on someone's shoulders, but there's no music. So we, the audience, should
Yeah.
know that nothing's going to happen, but it's still new to us still, or we're still waiting in this kind of atmosphere of the triggering music. But it does such a good
Hmm.
job. And like you said, I've seen it so many times. I know that's not the second attack. But for a second, I was like, oh wait, is this gonna oh no, this is not the one.
No, yeah, even, you know, seen this somewhat recently, seen it plenty of times. I still got duped by the fake outs,
Hmm.
like I said, my son wasn't really watching this, but he was kind of playing in the room while I watched it. And the whole reason I wanted to watch it in the living room is because I actually own it on Blu-ray and I didn't want to have to go like rent it
Yeah,
digitally to watch on my tablet.
of course.
When I heard that scream, there was part of me that was like, "Oh shoot, like it's gonna be bloody and like I don't want him to see it." And no, it was not.
No.
It was the fake out one. It's insane how effective this is again when you think of now that we know what a mess the production was.
Yeah.
Like so effective, and then also some of the way these shots are set up and choreographed, like both of us had mentioned, you know, different things we like just within this same scene. It's like, I mean, who knows? Maybe part of why they took so long was because Steven Spielberg was taking too long setting up all these shots, but worth
Right.
it, in my opinion.
Well, because like right after that over the shoulder fake out is Alex
Mhm,
getting eaten.
mhm.
And then you get that like the one of the shots of the film, I would call it.
The dolly zoom.
Yeah.
So, for people who might not understand, when we say tracking or dolly, we're talking about the camera being set up on a literal track, like being pushed on wheels. Zoom is more so using the zoom feature on the camera, like the camera lens. So for this very famous shot of Brody, where he realizes someone else is being attacked again, and it's, the horror of the situation is dawning
Hmm.
on him. The way this is described is a forward track while zooming out. So moving the camera forward while zooming the lens out. But yes, you were right that it was apparently the reverse of a shot that they created for the Hitchcock film Vertigo,
Hmm.
which in Vertigo, they forward zoom reverse track.
And they do this also in Goodfellas when they're in the cafe.
Oh, do they?
Because
I didn't. Hmm.
the outside gets closer, but the so what the shot does is if you think about moving forward on a subject, they're gonna be larger in the frame. You're
Hmm.
moving a camera physically forward, and when you're zooming out, you're keeping that subject, Brody, the same size, but now this background is coming closer to Brody. And what this
Hmm.
does, at least for me, is it messes with your depth perception. This gives you this like uncomfortable, tense feeling because this background is literally like rushing forward behind Brody as he realizes that a shark had just attack had just happened. And it does
Hmm.
make you feel a little like disoriented and uncomfortable.
Yeah, disoriented definitely, I think is the word. But it's funny when, as I'm sitting here listening to you describe it, it's like, oh, like a visual panic attack. But I mean, that's kind
Yes.
of, yeah.
Very much so.
Yep.
Yeah. And it's cool too because I don't know what they did here because I don't think this is one of the Bruces. I don't know if they use some other like it's so quick though, who knows? You kind of see like a the shark coming out of a water in a quick little barrel roll and then like the gushing of blood everywhere, which obviously that was staged.
Hmm.
So much blood for this little kid.
Oh,
It like
yeah,
makes up for what we didn't see at the beginning of the film. I
I
think
know.
it's kind of cool because it's in broad daylight now. So I think it's enhanced because of
Hmm.
that versus we couldn't see anything. It's tense and creepy. Now it's horror. This is terrifying.
Hmm. But to your point too, we didn't hear the music last time when we had that fake out of like, the girl up on the guy's shoulders who was screaming. Again, definitely use this music to be like, that's your cue, son,
Hmm.
leave the room. It's going to
Yeah.
get bad. Also, like you said, it's not necessarily the very first time we hear the music, but it's the first time we hear it, when it gets like sped up,
Yeah.
like maybe the whole thing that everyone's used to hearing. My son was like, "Oh, I know that music. It's from Dino Dana." And for people who don't know, Dino Dana is, I don't think it's PBS. I want to say it's like a Canadian kids show, but it's on Amazon. Dana is a girl who can like see dinosaurs. Like she's really into dinosaurs. She can see dinosaurs. There's other variations. There's Dino Dan that came before her. I guess he grew up and couldn't see the dinosaurs anymore. I don't know.
Oh my God.
But yeah, it's really funny. There's like a Google search. It's like what happened to Dino Dan, and I think the person means like what happened to the TV show. But one of the top answers is like he went insane because he could see dinosaurs.
Oh my.
But anyway, there's a episode of Dino Dana where apparently they were talking about a megalodon, which, prehistoric water reptile, marine reptile. I can't think of what the actual term is. It is not a dinosaur, okay? I know this much because my son yells at me when I call a not dinosaur a dinosaur. But apparently for the megalodon episode, they used the Jaws music. which
Nice. Okay.
I
Okay.
appreciate. I This led to me trying to explain to my son that like sometimes certain music or shots or whatever get super famous and then they get parodied in other movies.
Mm-hmm.
Because this has not been the first instance where my son's been like, "Oh, I know this. This is from this kid show I watch." And I'm like, "Well, it was in this first, and then the
Right.
kid show used it."
Yeah.
That was really funny though because, as I'm like, "Okay, the scary music, that's the signal something bad's happening." He's like, "Oh, I know this." And he just like stayed put for a little bit because he's like,
Jeez.
"Oh, it's from Dino Dana. It's harmless."
Yeah. It's just you wait, kid.
Yep.
I do
Um,
like that apparently Spielberg was you got to listen to this a little early, the score before obviously the movie was done, and he thought it was a joke. He's like, no, no, really, what's really gonna be the music? And he's like, oh, this is what I got. This is all I got, man. He's like, interesting. So obviously they used it, and
mhm,
later Spielberg kind of said Jaws wouldn't have been successful, especially after all the problems we've mentioned, if it wasn't for the score, like the Jaws theme specifically. And
mhm.
then Williams says, yeah, if it wasn't for Jaws, I probably wouldn't have jump started my career.
So did Spielberg just think it was too simplistic?
I believe so. That's kind of the vibe I got from the little quotes I read.
Yeah.
Like just very two, three, four notes, whatever, over and over again.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny because as you're saying this, I'm thinking about like the score from Jurassic Park because that was probably the one other movie we talked about with like a really famous score, and I guess there is more to the Jurassic Park theme, but also you're not using the music to alert you to danger in the same way.
Correct. Yeah.
So it's different usage.
You could
Didn't
argue that his score was, you can almost say like that's Bruce 4. Because there are a lot of
Yeah.
times we don't see a shark, but we hear the music, so we know the shark is nearby.
Mhm. Didn't he win an Oscar for the score?
Yes, he was also conducting the Oscar orchestra at the time. So he had to jump out of the pit, run on stage, grab his Oscar, and go back into conducting the orchestra.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's funny. I assume the orchestra knew what they were doing for that little bit without him.
I have to go back and see, but I'm assuming so. They are professionals. I'm hoping that they can keep it up.
Yeah, that's funny. Huh. Well, good for that guy. It's so funny. Well, it's funny thinking because you mentioned that this like launched his career. So many people, this was like a jumping off point for them, like Spielberg
Right.
too, Richard Dreyfuss, I believe. Just very, like I said, like I feel like this movie is just so many happy accidents that seem to work out for everybody.
Absolutely.
So yeah, we have poor Alex getting eaten by the shark. That kills me at the very end of this scene where like everyone's out of the water and the mom is just standing there calling his name and just like, oh,
Yeah, that is kind of
I
tough.
hate it.
And you know she knows because
I
everyone's out of the
know.
water and she's not looking at the beach. She's not like scanning the sand for her son. She's looking
Hmm.
back out to the
She's looking and
water
hmm.
like you know, but she knows he ain't coming back.
Yeah.
Ugh.
And just yeah, no, like I'm getting chills right now just like talking about it, like knife to the heart. But then after this, I guess maybe emotional for me as a mom, I don't know, but this like intense, like somewhat emotional scene, we cut to this town meeting where it's almost like I almost feel like these townspeople are cartoon characters. Like you could argue they're
Hmm.
taking it seriously, but they're just being ridiculous about it.
You know, now you say cartoon characters, I totally realized just now that it kind of gives me like a very atypical The Simpsons town meeting. Like anytime they
Oh,
have
I could
something
see
going on in
that.
The Simpsons, this kind of feels like that.
Hmm.
I mean, yeah, I could do some parallels with some characters, but I'm not going to. But wow, you just kind of you opened my eyes a little bit here.
Well, because they're just being so like silly about their supposed solutions. And
Hmm.
not only that, my husband pointed out, because he was watching this with me, the chalkboard in the back, which, we're not really paying attention to yet. We will be in a second. But the chalkboard in the back has a chalk drawing of a shark,
Hmm.
which, like, it looks fine. It's not like a bad drawing or anything, but he was like, "Oh, look, just in case you didn't know what a shark looks like." And then we looked closer and realized there's a little stick figure guy in the shark's mouth.
Yeah.
Like they draw this teeny stick figure that totally fits in the shark's mouth completely. And he was like, "Oh, okay, like just in case you didn't know, this is what a shark attack looks like." So now they all know what they're looking for.
Yeah, they need another visual representation of Alex's attack.
Mhm.
Maybe maybe this chalkboard drawing is left over from the original director when the production team tried to explain the difference between whales and sharks.
That's great. I hope that's the reason. The ghost of like Dick Richards is still with us.
Hmm.
Like everyone, this is a shark.
And maybe the shark is eating Dick Richards in the drawing, like Spielberg. This is what happened to Dick when he didn't know what a whale was. Keep it up.
Or he didn't know what a shark was.
Same difference. He
Yeah, he
got them
didn't
both.
know either,
Yeah, he got
apparently.
it
Yeah.
crisscrossed. Anyway,
Gosh.
sorry.
No, it's okay. Suddenly we get serious because this is our introduction to Quint
Hmm.
scraping his nails down the damn chalkboard. Of everything that happens in this movie, this is my least favorite thing.
Yeah, it's funny too because it wasn't like horrible at first. Like, okay, that sounds kind of fake. It's in post, but then it keeps going and it just gets to
Hmm.
you. Like it does like burrow into your brain and like sh shiver up your spine.
Oh yeah. And like my husband in particular is one of those people that really like does not like the sound of nails on chalkboards or really anything. So he was just like, "Oh God, I felt that in my teeth." Like he
Yeah.
couldn't handle it. But and like you said, it goes on so long. But also speaking of, parody, this introduction to Quint, like maybe it held up at the time, but I can't help seeing it as a little goofy now. Like you just have like the town weirdo, like the black sheep who I don't know if we really trust him with anything, but he also just happens to know a ton about the topic at hand
Right. He's
and
the
also has to
yeah
like introduce himself in some like weirdo way.
insane way. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. He's just apparently just this knowledgeable shark man on an
Hmm.
island.
Yep.
Like the
Hmm.
guy that warns the kids not to go to the camp or whatever,
Yes.
or kind of in a way, the guy that warns you about the velociraptors.
Sure.
Hmm.
I guess I didn't think of Muldoon too much because Muldoon, like, I never doubted that he had a good head on his shoulders.
Yeah.
He did not come off as crazy. He came off as legitimately knowledgeable and capable.
Yes.
But yeah, I definitely thought of no one horror movie in particular, but just like there's always that character that understands, the mysticism or the legend of what you're dealing with that
Oh yeah.
they're kind of they're going to be like maybe a little creepy looking and warn you about stuff and then disappear into like a black cloud.
Right, yeah. Yeah, well, Dune doesn't do the creepy aspect of it, but he's like super
Hmm.
knowledgeable. He's randomly there, in my opinion, to like help
Hmm.
move the mystique of the animal or problem.
Hmm. Yes.
But then also with all of his knowledge, and Quint does have knowledge and skill. He's just also crazy and an alcoholic.
Yeah.
But it's like, the poetry of being eaten by the thing you were hunting
Yeah. Yep.
from both cases.
Yeah. I just want to mention something that I read about Richard Shaw, the actor who plays Quint, was an alcoholic in real life, which we will touch on that again because that comes into play. But apparently he had some issues with the IRS and they had to keep like flying him to Canada every few days.
Oh my God.
So he was British, maybe Irish, but he was all tangled up with like legal, like tax evasion issues from the UK, the US, maybe one other country, but they must have really wanted him, is all I'm saying.
I want to say he's Irish, as I think he was like quoting something from Irish lore at one point, and there's a scene where like they're about to leave, like finally leave out to go get the shark, and Brody's wife is there, and he's just like saying some random stuff, and it was all ad-libbed, and it starts up like Mary Lee something. It's kind of like this dirty poem. Spielberg's like, okay, you have to tell me where you got that from because we might have to clear the rights. He goes, I don't think it'll be necessary. I memorized it from a gravestone in Ireland.
Okay, yeah.
Like, I don't know how true that is, but I read it in a couple sites. I'm like, that's insane. Like
Hmm.
all of those facts, if they're facts, and if they're not, I don't care because they're fun. But it's like you memorized a poem from a
Like a dirty poem off of a
on a
gravestone.
gravestone from Ireland. Like what?
Maybe the
And you
actor
chose
in
now to say
Winter.
it?
Right.
Anyway,
The more we talk about him, I'm wondering if it's one of those situations where the actor and the character are a little bit of the same person.
yeah, I don't think they can fire him because they were probably afraid.
Yeah, that too.
Maybe he wasn't really supposed to be eaten. They're like, we gotta kill him off somehow. We can't finish him. We can't let him finish the movie.
Oh,
There's a sequel. We can't have Quentin in it. We're done with this actor.
that's so funny. I mean, it kind of sounded like all of the actors were done with Jaws at the end. But
Yeah.
so, we talk a lot about tension. And for me, I love this scene where these like two honestly dumb local fishermen decide they're going to try to catch the shark. They're just like on a dock and throw some meat in the water
Hmm.
that, they've taken out of one of their freezers. And again, you never see the shark, but we know it starts coming, it takes the meat, and we also get a sense of how big it must be and how powerful because it ends up ripping the dock off of the structure or part of the dock off of the whole structure. But I couldn't help noticing, like, so one of the guys gets pulled in. The other guy is left on the part that is still intact, and he's just yelling, like, come on, Charlie, come on, boy, you got it. Don't look back. Come on, boy. And I'm like, is he a dog? Like, I guess I don't know what else he would do in that situation, but it just really sounded like he was calling his dog who fell into the water. But I did think it was kind of funny. Like, we end this scene with, the man who fell in, he gets up, he's okay. He's like terrified, but he's okay. And again, we never see the shark. And it, based on whatever got stuck to him, we can tell that he hits shore and kind of like stops. And I guess I'm surprised because later, the whole second half of the movie, when we're on the ocean with the three guys, we see the shark like beaching a lot
Hmm.
and like really jumping out. So, like, I don't know. Maybe the shark is supposed to be smart and he knew those three were trying to kill him, but like, what? I'm surprised he just stopped here, seeing what we see later.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know mannerisms of sharks, but I guess
Yeah,
for
why?
that,
Why don't you understand his brain?
let's ask your son. I think
Yeah,
I guess towards the end, because it does feel like the shark is attacking the boat and the guys, like he's almost got a vendetta on them. But I mean, maybe he does. He's getting shot at with flares and guns and spears. He's got
that's true. They're going
barrels
pretty
of
hard.
yeah. He's like, you know what? Piss off, man. I'm just trying
Yeah,
to eat some women over here. I don't know.
yeah. So after this, we're introduced to Richard Dreyfuss's character, Hooper. I can't think of his actual it's he's not like literally a marine biologist. There's something else they call him that's like specific to studying sharks.
Yeah.
Apparently, they had trouble casting this role. George Lucas suggested him to Steven Spielberg because he had just finished American Graffiti with Richard Dreyfuss. Dreyfuss turned down the role,
Hmm.
but came back to Spielberg because he had just finished a movie called The Apprenticeship of Duddy Kravitz. And when he saw the previews for that movie, or like not the trailers, but like the pre-screenings, was so unhappy with his performance that he was scared that if he didn't do Jaws, like get into another movie right away, no one would ever hire him again.
Oh wow.
Um, yeah, so he basically did Jaws out of desperation. But again, like happy accidents really worked out well for him.
Right.
Yep,
That's crazy.
I know.
Also, kind of smart. Like he saw his pre. He's like, "Oh, I didn't do a good job. Shit, let's call Steve."
Yeah. Well, and I mean, obviously, this is, I don't think the apprenticeship of Duddy Kravitz did too well because I've never heard of it.
This is literally the first time hearing what this title. So
My husband was convinced that Richard Dreyfuss was the dad in Beethoven, and I don't know why. But in an effort to prove that he was not the dad in Beethoven, we we looked up Richard Dreyfuss on IMDb, and in my husband's words, he did a bunch of dangerous fish movies plus What About Bob?
Trying to picture the dad from Beethoven. I definitely know it's not Dreyfus.
I think it's like Charles Grodin. I can't
Sh-
think of what else he was in
Yeah,
now.
Beethoven
But
too.
oh, I did want to point out though, for me, I always think of Richard Dreyfuss as being in Mr. Holland's Opus.
Okay.
Have you ever seen that movie?
I actually don't think so.
I think it must be the time it came out because I remember watching that when I was a kid, and I swear to you, I watched it in school too. But I think this was like as a kid, my introduction to Richard Dreyfuss as an actor. And like I can still hear the song that he writes because he has a deaf son and he's a conductor. So this is obviously like, incredibly painful for him because his son will never hear music, whatever. But at the end, he like writes this composition for his son and it's called Beautiful Boy. And like he's performing it or he's having his students or whatever perform it. And he like does the words in sign language for his son. And it's like beautiful, beautiful, beautiful boy. And like, first of all the sign language I know is from Mr. Holland's Opus.
Okay.
Secondly, don't know why I watched this so much as a kid, but watched it enough to remember that song. And that's what I kept thinking of watching him in this, which is much like Val Kilmer, probably not the role that they want to be remembered for, but here we are.
You quoting that song, so I've never seen the movie. That
Hmm.
definitely makes that effect now. I think of the John Lennon song about his son. Those are literally the lyrics, also. Like literally the same.
Maybe, you know what? Maybe because they get into a fight about this is a plot point in the movie. They get into a fight when John Lennon is killed.
Hmm.
Richard Dreyfuss's character is very upset about it. And his son is like an angsty teenager at this point, and he's like, "Oh, you don't think I care about John Lennon just because I can't hear music?" And of course, they're having this fight in like in sign language. You know what? So maybe he didn't write it. Maybe he's playing the John Lennon song.
Yeah, this is what it sounds like. When I think of Richard Dreyfuss, though, if I'm not thinking of him on a boat, I'm thinking of him playing with mashed potatoes in Close Encounters of the Third Kind.
Oh yeah, yeah. Your reference is better than mine.
It doesn't hurt that it's like Dreyfuss Spielberg, and then they pair up
Yeah.
again.
Okay. So Richard Dreyfuss in this movie. After he's introduced, we have this scene where like all the townspeople are going out on boats to hunt the shark. And maybe I never realized this before, but they were like, I don't know, they were just acting like they were all going to have a nice day on the water, like they were bringing their dogs.
Yeah, it was weird to
Um,
me.
so weird considering like I just don't feel like anyone's taking it super seriously considering two people have been killed at this point that we know of. Maybe the public at large doesn't know about like the first victim, that girl, because it was sort of covered up. But a bunch of people saw that Alex kid get eaten in front of them.
Well, keep in mind at the town hall meeting, I believe Alex's mom placed a bounty on the shark. So everyone
Oh,
wants their
that's
money.
right.
Yeah,
Yeah, I forgot forgot that one really big point.
all bets are
Um,
off.
yeah, but also I just can't imagine taking my dog out with me, but
Yeah, it made me mad. I'm like, a shark just ate like two people, like, one you know of, and there's these dogs are like these are little boats. They're not like the same boat as the orca is.
right,
These are like personal two, 3-man boats with
right.
dogs literally hanging off the edges. Like, what are you doing?
Hmm. Yeah, and not that I guess it would make a difference because they're on the water, but it's not even like these are hunting dogs.
No,
I
they're show
really,
dogs.
yeah, I really feel like this is just illustrating how easy they think this is going to be, or
Hmm.
just how they're not really taking the threat seriously. Like, I agree with you. They want the bounty. But like, oh my God, I could not imagine. Like, my dog would be like a hot mess if I took her on a boat like this.
Right. Yeah.
She is part hound too, but like, no way.
No, not shark hound.
Not sure to count.
It's funny though, because he's like coming to shore and everyone's leaving, so he's gotta fight the crowd and everything. He's trying to also warn them, even though he just got there, but he got there
Hmm.
because he heard
Hmm.
about the attacks. They reached out to him,
Right.
obviously, and he's like so kind of like. I don't want to say sarcastic. That's not the right word here, but he's like, "Oh, you shouldn't go do that. We're know what we're doing, you town guy." And he's like, "All right, well, have fun going. Everyone's going out there to die. Everyone have fun dying. Everyone's dying. Everyone's gonna die. You're gonna die." And he just like keeps under his breath, like being polite, but
Hmm.
also kind of like spiteful, and I love it.
Yeah, everyone hates a scientist with all their reasoning,
Right, the
much like real
knowledge.
life.
Yeah, we're all gonna
Yeah.
die. Yeah, see, this is
Yep.
work. Yep.
Hmm. Yep. Yes. So, oh, my husband asked how they were going to know the shark when they see it because they didn't have the chalkboard drawing anymore.
I'd have
This
been
is when
so upset with your household watching this movie with them.
it was a very funny experience. I had a good time. I do like later when Hooper is doing the autopsy on the shark that they think is the right one. They catch a shark and they're like, yes, this is it. This is the man eater. And it's no.
No,
What's he
he's
doing
doing.
now? Oh, on the girl, right?
Girl, yeah, because
Okay,
when he's
okay.
doing it, he's describing all these lacerations and bite marks and the fact that she's missing lots of parts of her body. And he says a couple times, twice for sure though, he's like, "This definitely wasn't a boating accident." And it's like, no shit. But obviously that's what the lie was.
Hmm.
And Brody, what does he know? He's never been on an island. He hates water. And
Hmm.
it's like just how he's describing it is we get more facts because we didn't see anything obviously, but like does a really good performance because I doubt he's ever done this before, or if he has, it's maybe been once or twice because he mostly probably deals with sharks, being that it is his
Yeah.
job, and he's like physically ill and
Hmm.
does a really good job, getting that across.
Yes. That was really my whole point. I thought it was so funny when he's, recording his notes and how you do apparently when you're doing an autopsy and just without missing a beat. May I have a glass of water, please? Because he's
Mm,
obviously struggling.
yeah, I like that they gave him like a Dixie cup of water. He used a splash of water, and because of previous
Hmm.
conversations, it's hard not to think of Wayne's World.
Yeah.
Especially when he looks physically ill. Like after he drinks his water, he can spew into it.
Yeah. I caught a glimpse of his like I guess it was the recording device that they had at the time, but it looked like this huge like device clipped to his like waistband.
Hmm.
And I know I've mentioned this before. I grew up watching the X-Files. All I'm saying is Dana Scully never had a problem doing autopsies, but also she had much sleeker recording devices.
20 years tech development will do that for you, I suppose.
Yeah.
Yeah, he keeps going on. It was a shark, it was a shark. And then to your point, there's a nice cut to a shark hung up to dry, so to speak. The townsfolk, they did
Hmm.
it. They caught a shark. A
Yep.
shark. It was a shark.
A shark doesn't matter.
Obviously, this isn't the right shark. And Hooper like is flabbergasted because he's like, no, this is too small. The bite radius. He's all this, sciencey stuff that the mayor and the
Yeah.
townsfolk don't want to hear any about it. And now they can go swimming again.
Hmm. Just in time for the 4th of July.
Right.
And also
It's,
collect that bounty, I guess.
well, right. Yeah, of course. And you see Quint like very, very briefly. He's just like zooming past on his boat, just like laughing at everybody.
Again, like the town maniac that
Yeah.
somehow knows more than anyone else.
Yeah. There's no dialogue, but I can only imagine what's going through his head.
I love, again, the way they set up this scene. How did Steven Spielberg have so much time to compose these when apparently they were having problems upon problems? But Brody and Hooper are talking about how this isn't the right shark and they're facing each other. The mayor is standing a little bit behind them, but between them.
Hmm.
And you can see him visually being in the way of the actual truth, like what is really going on. And eventually he does like bust in and interrupt them. It's like, no, no, we're opening the beaches. This is a shark. Bye.
Yeah. See, we caught it. We're all done. Everyone go home. Well, no, don't go
Yep.
home. Stay here. Stay here and spend money.
Yeah, right. Okay. Do you have any feelings about Alex's mother showing up in like full morning gear?
So many feelings.
Okay. No, for
Oh,
real though, because I always think this is so out of place.
oh, yes, 100%. I am for real.
Okay.
My personal theory is that because of the attack and how gruesome it was and that cool shot we mentioned earlier, I don't think we would have known who this actress was because I think about it right now. I think she even looks different besides the fact she's wearing all black. Is it the same woman? I don't know. Probably is, but maybe it's like Bruce number five. The point is, I think that
She Bruce number.
I think they dress her in this like full on like 2005 goth gear to make sure we remember that she's in mourning because I think she was
Because
so
she's the mom.
she's forgettable in the previous scene
Mm.
she's in. Even though we just talked about how chilling it is, she's just like Alex, Alex. It's like, but I don't
Yeah.
remember her at all.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Like maybe they felt they needed to give us a visual clue as to who she is. Because like I think she does tell Brody who she is, but part of the suspense of the scene is watching her walk up to him. Like
Hmm.
they're all celebrating that they caught this shark, and then here's this like mourning woman. But I don't, every time I watch this, even before I was like actually paying close attention and taking notes, I just kept thinking, like, why is she in this Victorian mourning gear with like the veil over her face?
Hmm.
It just, and again, I was like, did they still do this in the 70s? It seems like no, but who knows? I wasn't alive then. It just seems so out of place.
Yeah, and she smacks the
But
shit out of him.
yeah, fun fact, this woman was a non-actor or like a non-professional actor at least who lived in the town where they filmed this.
Yeah,
She had to smack Brody for real because she didn't know how to do
yeah,
like a fake slap. Did you read that too?
several times.
Yes.
Poor Brody.
Poor Brody. Again, I feel like this actor too, he was the only like cool-headed, like kind of reasonable actor on set based on some of the things we've read. And he just like has to deal with all the shit going on everywhere else, including getting slapped in the face like multiple times.
Apparently, one time she hit him so hard, like his glasses flew off.
That's funny. I read that Spielberg had to make them like hug between takes because he was getting like really frustrated as you would if someone slapped you in real life. And he like at one point was like, I'm gonna slap her back. So he was just over it.
I mean, I feel like
Um,
one, maybe two takes could be enough. I don't know. I'm not Spielberg, but that's a lot. It's a lot of getting slapped.
yeah, I was thinking about that too for continuity. Like, wouldn't his face be red after a while
I
too?
think the shot we get is over his shoulder, and she smacks him. It almost looks like she hits him in the ear in the take we see.
Oh, okay.
So really, it could have been anybody. He could have put a stunt double in there.
Okay, after this, is that when we get this scene where Hooper pops over to Brody's house while he and his wife are eating dinner?
Yeah.
Okay. I always thought this was so silly that he just like busts in there carrying like two bottles of wine. And I think they were already drinking too. And then like they talk very briefly and then go out on a boat and like obviously have been drinking.
Hmm. As
Okay.
one does, yeah.
As one does. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I
Gotta
don't
sing
think it's
some
too
sea
weird that
songs.
he shows up with wine because I feel like he knows Brody's had a bad day.
I mean, I understand it too in the sense of like you don't want to show up empty-handed and whatnot, but I just think it's so odd that every time these supposedly more knowledgeable people go out on a boat to try to solve this problem, they are also drunk.
Sure, yeah. I mean, that's part of the appeal of the movie, I think.
Okay.
Well, okay, so I don't want to go too much into it, but he shows up, Brody's had a bad day. He's the only other person on there that believes him and wants to stop the shark. And like they're all blaming the chief of police now, even though he's obviously tried to stop this from jump. He brings wine over for dinner that I don't think he was invited for, but he assumed they were having dinner,
Right.
so he brought wine to be a nice guy. I think the wine leads to the boat trip because they're like, F it, we're gonna do it anyways. We're gonna go find this shark because the mayor said it's done. Everything's done. Brody's the bad guy, I'm the
Yeah.
hero. Screw you, science man. Screw you, officer. Like I am
Yeah.
the hero in my blue blazer with little anchors on them. Um, yeah, I know. I know this is bad. This is bad
um,
wardrobe. And so I
it's
think like
funny.
a little bit of liquid courage maybe it was happening in this
Sure.
scene. I get how it's a little weird, but at the same time, it kind of makes sense to me. They just kind of had it, and It's more of the effort mentality, I believe.
I can see that, especially the liquid courage.
Hmm.
Um, I do want to point out, though, because this might be the only time we really see them interact. In the book, Hooper has an affair with Brody's wife.
Yeah, it's weird. That's one of the side
I
things that they left out, obviously.
That and apparently there was some sort of mafia subplot where the mafia was trying to get the mayor to keep everything open.
Were they loan sharks? I couldn't help myself. I'm sorry.
Oh my God. Okay. When did we talk? Oh, Kill the Irishman. We don't like the term loan sharks.
Mm,
Mm.
I told you not to go in the water.
Jesus.
Uh,
Okay. Anyway. Oh, another point. They might need the liquid courage because I forgot that Brody is like scared of the water.
hmm.
Okay, so there's
Yeah.
that. But this brings us to my personal scariest part of the movie when Hooper dives in and finds one of the townspeople dead, like floating underwater in his boat.
Hmm.
Just a jump scare with this dead body that pops out of a hole in the boat. And I think it's right after Hooper finds a shark tooth and like I think it's just gonna be that or something. And I think he's so busy like examining the tooth that all of a sudden the body pops out and scares Hooper as well as me, the viewer.
It is a good jump scare. It's like
Hmm.
like a hole in the boat or whatever, and the head pops up out of nowhere. The reaction is weird. I feel like it's delayed because like it cuts to Dreyfus like looking wide-eyed, so he's scared, and it cuts back to the head, and then back to Dreyfus wide-eyed, and then he like freaks out underwater.
Hmm.
I don't know. I feel like that maybe he's drunk and his reaction speed isn't as good. I just felt like that the scare was great and the reaction was good, like the close up, but then like the physical part of the reaction I felt was a little slow. I don't know.
Hmm.
It just sticks out to me for some
Yeah.
weird reason. I did find out that after a preview screening, there were a couple scares that later on in the movie. This part wasn't scripted and Spielberg got greedy, quote unquote, and wanted
Okay.
another jump scare that someone like the audience wouldn't see coming, and they
Hmm.
went and shot this after the fact.
Hmm. So were the other scares like toward the end when we actually see the shark?
Yeah, I mean
Okay.
probably like the last attack before they go in the water was a good scare too.
That's true too. Yeah.
So
My son took this opportunity to let me know that a shark's teeth never stop growing.
okay,
He
okay,
was more struck by the discovery of the shark tooth, obviously.
yeah, clearly.
Yeah. I have a little note that like after all this, they're like back on land, whatever, talking to the mayor again. And the mayor accuses Hooper of just wanting his name in National Geographic. And like that's why he's making a big deal about the shark attacks. And it's like such little payoff if he was making this all up. Like, I don't know. That just seems like the dumbest reason. You're a scientist. You probably care about National Geographic.
Maybe, much like Cosmopolitan in the 1970s, Nat Geo
Hmm.
maybe held more weight, and this would have jump-started his shark science career. I don't know. I got nothing for that. It is a weird
That's
line. It's like a low blow, but not.
yeah.
It's like, you're gonna be a Nat Geo. He's like,
Yeah.
what? But like it does kind of harp back a little bit to your point earlier, social
Hmm.
media and whatnot, because right after that they showed tourists like by the flocks coming off boats and driving
Hmm.
in
Hmm.
from wherever the hell. And I feel like if this was something more modern, there'd be maybe even protesters, but I don't think there would be people coming have no idea. They covered up the first
Right.
attack. The second one
Hmm.
had just happened a couple days ago. And these people who are driving there and they get on a ferry, they've probably been driving since the first attack. Who knows? This is like, you know,
Right.
a destination place. And I feel like, it's 20, 50 something odd years later that the cell phone would have changed that.
Oh yeah, because the news would travel so much faster.
Yeah. And then everyone's there, right? Everyone's there. They're on the beach. Presumably they're going to be staying somewhere, spending money. And he goes up to somebody he knows. I don't know if it's a townie or a guy who comes yearly. It's an older guy, and he's like, "Why aren't you in the water? How come no one's in the water? You got to get in the water. Please go in the water." And the old guy is like very timid. He's like, "Oh, just put some sunscreen on or something like that."
Yeah.
And I get the point because of the movie, but like they are you won. The people are here. Like you had one more
Right.
chance not to have another death, and be like, you know what? We got a septic tank that broke. Don't want to go in the water. It's gross or something. But thanks for coming to the beach. The beaches are still nice. They were already
Yeah.
there. The beaches were full packed,
Yeah.
and he's just like,
And
go in the goddamn water.
you would think too, like the tourists who have no idea this is going on, like they probably would have been in the water though.
Right? Yeah.
The townies would be like, I'm gonna sit this out. But yeah, I noticed how concerned this guy was to put his whole family in the water. And then you even see them all like walking in a line into the water, like holding hands, like they're just like going to their deaths. And like the mom, especially, is so concerned.
Yeah. A
I
little
don't
death
know if I would
wish.
have even been at the beach, to be honest with you.
Yeah. And then Brody's kids are there, and he's like, Michael, go to the pond, which I guess is not a pond like I think of when I hear of pond, like an
Hmm.
isolated body of water. It's just kind of like more of the bay area, I guess.
Yeah, I assumed it was like a shallower area or something,
Yeah.
but it is kind of separate from the main ocean.
Yeah. But it's connected, which is important. And
Yes.
Michael makes a joke that the bay is for, or the pond is for the old ladies. And so he goes there with some of his friends. There's another guy there. He's doing something. He's on a little boat, and he ends up getting attacked. For real. We do have that fake scare like minutes before where some kids with a fake fin are fucking with the tourists. And
Yep.
so everyone like is like all these cool close shots of people getting out of the water. There's a dude that's like, get off of that. And he takes an inflatable boat from a child and uses it to get away faster, like a douchebag.
Yeah, I noticed that part too. And I kept thinking that I would like to think that if I was in this situation, if anything, I would have picked this kid up as I was running because, like, I was worried he was going to get crushed,
Hmm.
like, from everyone panicking,
Yeah,
and also I assume he can't swim as fast as
right.
adults.
And there's like a mom just like screaming in place holding her child. Like that doesn't help anybody.
Oh my God. Yeah, I saw that too. Like, I don't know, fight or flight, I guess. I don't know.
Right.
I was going to say, you already had one kid die. Like, why are you all like abandoning that child when taking his raft?
I
Yeah,
do like the
but
reveal of the kids and they come out of the water to their point of view shot of like a bunch of guns in their face.
that
And
whole
they,
thing was done so well.
yeah, they were really good at the fake outs in this movie.
Yeah. And like you said earlier, we didn't have the music, so we should have known.
Hmm.
But still, you have that, point of view as if it is the shark, camera half in the water, and such a good job at portraying how like chaotic it is when everyone's rushing out.
Hmm.
But yeah, I do like that when the boys kind of like pick their heads up out of the water and everyone just has guns trained on them. Is this, but it's like right after this, someone yells that the shark's in the pond.
Yeah, and no one
Okay.
reacts. Brody looks over there, but they're all still looking out in the water. And this is what I
Hmm.
think is like a classic boy who cried wolf situation.
Oh yeah.
Only
Hmm.
it's shark, obviously. And he kind of glances over, and then there's more screaming. Then the music hits. And we're not
Hmm.
even in the
Hmm.
water anymore. We're focused on Brody, and Brody's like running, and we're tracking him towards the pond, and he's running faster and faster as the music's picking up. And there's a cool aerial shot of the shark eating that surfer man guy. I don't know, it's just a random dude getting
Hmm.
eaten. And that part was
Yeah.
kind of scary because you see like maybe up until his gills, and it's still a very big head.
Hmm.
And then the dude's leg, I think, leg or arm sinks to the bottom.
Yeah. I was just gonna say I can envision that leg floating to the bottom. But
Hmm.
again, like I just feel like disembodied limbs like maybe deserve an R rating.
That is a good point.
That's all I'm
Hmm.
saying. I understand there was no PG-13. I just don't really know why we went with the PG instead of the R still.
I
Okay.
wasn't on the board. I couldn't tell you. I don't know if you're looking
I
for an
wasn't on
answer
the
from me.
board.
I don't have one. They didn't drop any F-bombs, so there's that.
There you go. Oh yeah, that's the more important part. It's what, you get three F bombs or two, and at the third you're not rated or
Something like that.
I did think it was kind of funny in the hospital. Like, so Brody is in the hospital with his son who is like gone into shock. Like, they think he's dead, but he's just paralyzed from shock, I guess. But so they show them in the hospital, and the mayor is apologizing like up and down to Brody that, his kid was hurt. And all I can think of is like, yes, this is still bad. I understand this, but you didn't seem this apologetic when a kid actually got eaten.
Right.
Uh, is it because you work with Brody and not Alex's
Well,
mom? Like,
well, I think the mayor is a little shook up too because at one point Brody's like, "We got to do something. You got to sign this paper. We got to close the beach down. We got to
mhm.
get Quint out there. We're gonna like you have to sign off on this or whatever." And he's just like, "My kids are on that beach too, Martin. My kids are on that beach." And so I think he's also in shock because it could have been his kids. So it's kind of like,
Yes.
fuck you, Mayor. Like now it's finally a little bit close to home. It's not just Brody's kid, but like his kids could have
Mhm.
been in shock too, or could have been that close to the shark attack.
Yeah. And also there's like no hiding it from all the tourists too.
Well, there's that. So finally, we're hunting a goddamn shark.
Yeah.
And we load up Quint's boat. There's a couple of scenes of like the actors interacting. Whether they got along or not, they did not in real life. It definitely comes across between Quint and Hooper. I don't know how much is acting and how much is like suppressed anger, but good job, gentlemen.
Hmm.
But they finally got in the boat, and I had to pause to, I think, help like let one of the dogs out or like go to the restroom or whatever. Yeah, and I noticed that it's exactly about halfway through the film. It's almost like exactly an hour in. It's
Hmm.
like, oh, one half by land, one half by sea.
Yep.
And so like the whole movie's different now in the second half of the film.
Hmm.
And I never really put that together, never noticed that. I do like that Quint is just reluctant to get help. He wanted to be solo. And then when he's on the boat, he's just barking orders and doing nothing but drinking Narragansett.
Yeah. Quinn is such an interesting character to me. And I know we've already touched on it that he's like, you know, the town weirdo who's like knows everything about sharks. And we learn a little bit why he knows so much about sharks on this boat. But he also strikes me as like initially just wanting all the glory for himself.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe it's not so much glory as revenge, which we find out.
Mm-hmm.
But he really does not love that he is sharing this space with Brody and Hooper.
No. But yet it seems like he is also loving it at the same time.
There are scenes of camaraderie for sure.
Oh, no,
Also
that's not
scenes
what
where
I
he's
meant.
just, oh,
I meant like he's bossing people around. He like seems to really get a thrill yelling at Brody, especially Hooper. Like he just seems to really enjoy it. He's always like smiling and laughing like a crazed lunatic. It's like, tie that
yep.
thing on. Like it's just crazy.
Well, we already said he was
I
crazy.
know, but like I felt like he liked him on there because I don't know how he'd done this by himself because how can you drink and drive the boat and shoot the fish and do the thing?
Well, delusions of grandeur. Quinn is setting himself up, and I don't, there's probably a term for it that I am not aware of, but like kind of like his chair where he's like bracing himself to like reel in. He thinks he's
Hmm.
caught the shark, or maybe he has at this point, but no one else knows.
Yeah, they had just started chumming the water and they have some bobbers or whatever in there, some bait for the shark to get. And while this is what the still same scene where he's like barking orders and drinking Narragansett and laughing like a crazy person. It starts the reel that he's like sitting by, the giant fishing
Hmm.
reel, like a big
Yeah.
professional one. It starts slowly clicking forward as if something had
Hmm.
grabbed it.
Hmm.
And I do like, to your point, like this shot, he's quiet. There's close-ups of him like strapping himself in, putting his feet up on the support
Yeah. Like
part. I
he's
don't know.
obviously bracing himself to reel in something big. But also, while this is going on, Brody is like practicing knot tying
Hmm.
and is completely oblivious.
Yeah.
And
Hooper's
it's right,
doing something else. Yeah.
and it's right when Brody is like celebrating that he finally got a knot right.
It's as soon as he does the knot, I think the reel just goes and
Yeah.
like we don't see anything still, but they know they've got
Hmm.
something. Hooper doesn't believe it's a shark yet because I forget why, I don't know. But then it ends up like rocking the boat and everyone falls over to where Brody like bumps into a bunch of CO or oxygen tanks that they use later for diving. And there's a little foreshadowing here about the compressed air. And it's just the rest of the movie. It's just these three dudes drinking and fishing, but like dangerously so.
Yeah, it's funny. I kind of stopped taking notes at this point because I got so into it, but also I I'm not saying it's not holding my attention. It just like there wasn't as much as many specific things to point out to
Yeah,
me.
I kind of did the
You
same thing.
you have the famous quote which you can discuss because I got it wrong.
I mean, you didn't have to tell on yourself. I was just
That's
noting.
okay.
A lot of people get it wrong. They're back to chumming the water because we haven't seen a breach yet. And then the shark just pops out. We really get a good look at it for the first time as the audience. And then his
Hmm.
reaction shot is awesome. And he slowly backs into the cabin. And it's, you're going to need a bigger boat. Again, the quick beat by beat to your point, then the lack of beats. It's just a lot of slow, drawn out moments.
Monotonous, yeah. Hmm.
They have a radio that they
Hmm.
use to stay in touch with the island, obviously,
Hmm.
and the voice on the radio that tries to get their attention because Brody's wife is on the line is, I believe, Steven Spielberg's cameo.
Nice. I forgot about them having that radio because doesn't Quint like destroy it later?
Yeah, because he's fucking crazy.
Yeah. So at some point while they're all on this boat together, the orca, by the way, I don't know if we've mentioned that since we've been discussing this whole second half of the movie. So there's this point where Quint is telling, I guess, both Hooper and Brody about his time during World War II, right? He was on the USS Indianapolis. It sunk. Basically, his whole story is about how everyone ended up in the water and a lot of them got eaten by sharks. First of all, there is controversy over who actually wrote this monologue because he tells a much more detailed, lengthier story than I just did. There are some people who say that Robert Shaw, the actor, wrote this, that he took it from a few lines that were like a quarter of a page to this whole monologue, and that he supposedly like did it himself one night while also being like drunk on set every day. There are also some screenwriters that are credited with writing it, but it gets confusing because some of these are the screenwriters who are not credited for their actual work on the screenplay, right? This would be around the time after Peter Benchley, the author, turned it over and they were shopping around looking for people to rehab it. So, like I said, some controversy. I'm pretty sure Robert Shaw claims it was him and him alone. But also, this whole monologue was done for the first time while Shaw was completely drunk. None of it was usable. He apparently called Steven Spielberg that night and like asked for another shot at it. And we got the shot that they ended up using in the movie, which I
Okay.
agree is like a nice little story. But I also feel like, of course, they would do another take if none of their footage was usable. I don't know, because like it's like, am I supposed to think that he was fired after this horrible drunken monologue? Because like, why wouldn't we do another go at it? But there was also a real USS Indianapolis that sunk. I believe I read it was the near the Philippines, or it was like the Sea of the Philippines. I might be getting that wrong, but it was a real ship that sank. There were a lot of soldiers that died, but most of the deaths had nothing to do with sharks, more so drowning and being out in the elements.
Yeah.
But for Quint, for our story's purposes, he's really here to get revenge on sharks as a species
Yes.
for killing all his men.
Yeah, it's kind of cool how they intertwine like an actual event and kind of folded it into this crazy man's story.
Hmm. One thing that I think of when I hear this monologue, I was on a cruise last year, and I swear to you, this older man was holding court with a Vietnam veteran's hat on, telling
Oh
people
boy.
about this time during the war that his ship sank, and there were all these sharks around. And like, I apologize profusely if this was a true story, but the brief time I heard him talking, because I was like on an elevator and then I got off and, didn't stick around for the rest of the story, really sounded like he was just telling Quint's story from Jaws. Because it was a ship sunk, a lot of men eaten by sharks, and there's a second where I was like, is he? doing the monologue from Jaws?
What if he was rehearsing his lines? What if they're making a Jaws like Broadway play he was trying out for? And he
Yeah.
went on the cruise to really get like into character. Sorry, I took it too far.
There is a Jaws Broadway play, by the way.
I didn't even know that. Look at that.
Yep.
Makes sense.
Uh, yeah. Also, Robert Shaw's son apparently wrote a Broadway show about his dad making this movie.
Oh,
Yeah. So
okay.
whatever. Two
Okay.
Broadway Jaws shows.
I like the tension that the story brings into the scene. It also kind of oddly enough relieves tension too between the characters. They kind of, well, two of them at least are drunk and they're kind of commiserating over scars and then they just start randomly singing. So then it went from like this creepy story to this like kind of happy like moment for whatever reason. They're on this boat happy that they're gonna die. And it's cool because then like you get a wide shot off the boat of the ocean in the boat, and then what surfaces is a yellow barrel, and like they're still singing over all this, and
Mm-hmm.
like so it's just fun because like how now we don't have the Jaws music because we have the gentleman singing, but now we
Mm-hmm.
visually
Mm-hmm.
with these yellow buoys, we visually can see the shark instead of just
Yeah.
having to have the audio cues. And you're like, oh, there are good times about to be over real soon.
Yep. When the shark started ramming the boat, like really hard, it's
Mm,
pretty loud. My dog woke up and was terrified. I actually had to like pause the movie and reassure her because every time you heard a hit, she was like looking around for where it was coming from.
that's
So
awesome.
Jaws scared my dog.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
When it switches to
Um,
daytime, because they're on the
mhm,
boat for a couple days here,
mhm,
and they've already like barreled him a couple more times, and like they're driving the boat real fast and chasing Jaws. So we mentioned John Williams' like Jaws theme and how iconic it is, and it's also triggering to let us know when Bruce is, coming around the corner. But like this whole part, it's like these quick, upbeat, whimsical moments of music. It kind of could like be put into like Pirates of the Caribbean movies. It's like almost like
mhm,
it's a different movie. There seems like they're more on like a nautical adventure for fun, like a boys' weekend out versus what they're actually doing. Again, setting
mhm.
helps too, like the bright sunshine, the clear sky, the blue water. But yeah, it
Yep.
definitely like gives it a different feeling. You're like, yeah, all right, look at these guys hanging. Oh yeah, they're gonna die. I forgot. Yeah, the shark's attacking them. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, and it to your point, they do build some camaraderie, especially compared to like when they first started and Quint just like hated all of them.
Hmm.
I think there's some understanding too, like some mutual understanding that develops too after a story. Wanted to point out two things. The way that Quint dies, Quint is the only one that doesn't make it back from this trip. Hooper has gone underwater into a shark, like in a shark cage.
Hmm.
I think the idea was he was going to shoot the shark,
Yeah,
like a dart gun.
he had like a bunch of drugs. He's gonna try to drug the
Mhm.
shark since the barrels were not tiring him like quick enough.
Yeah. First of all, the original script and also in the novel, Hooper dies in this shark cage.
Oh no.
Mhm. Because Jaws, we see it in the movie, he rams the cage so much, and they make comments about how the shark cage is not going to hold against a shark this big and, aggressive. In the movie, the shark does break through and Hooper swims away. Part of the reason this was changed was only because of the footage they were able to get of a real shark ramming the cage. They did, it wasn't with Spielberg, but some actual scientists who study sharks and would like film sharks off the coast of Australia got the footage of the shark ramming the cage, but the really good footage of it ramming the cage was when they didn't have like the dummy in there or whatever they were using to look like a person.
Yeah.
So that was part of why they let Hooper live because it was just like the footage they had to work with.
Okay.
I know, right? Happy accidents all around. But while this is going on, Quint and Brody are still on the ship. Feel free to take the wheel because I don't fully remember how this happens, but the shark eventually, breaches the ship. He's on the ship enough that he's like weighing it down, and Quint basically like ends up sliding right into his mouth
Yeah.
and is eaten.
Hmm.
And like I hate this, but also I kind of feel like it's such a poetic ending for his character.
Yeah.
I feel like if anyone, number one, were to not return, number two, specifically be eaten by the shark, just makes sense.
Oh, it makes all the sense. And
Hmm.
like you like Brody and Hooper, like you kind of want to like Quint, and there's moments where you do, and then like after
Yeah.
they do all the cool singing and storytelling around the campfire and all that stuff, the shark attacks the boat, like you said, scares your dog, but like also damages the boat to what they're taking on water. The engine is now kind of fucked. And Brody
Hmm.
goes to radio like in for help, like, hey, we need a he also said he said it again, you're going to need a bigger boat. We got to get a bigger boat. And that's when he comes up and just smashes the shit out of the radio. Like you're like, what the fuck, dude? What is your
Yeah, I think
problem? He like
for
literally
me
had
it
a
was
death wish.
yeah, for me it was really when Quint destroys the radio, puts all of their lives in danger that I'm like, you know what, fine. Get
Yeah.
eaten. That's
Yeah.
fine. Again, why is this rated PG? Maybe it's not as like gory as it could have been, but it is still it makes my stomach churn a little bit, like just watching him slide down and get bitten in half and
Hmm.
oh boy. Also, having read all the behind the scenes stuff that we did, I really wonder how that worked with him basically sliding into a constantly malfunctioning like robot shark.
I
Like,
would
seems
not
like
trust
that could
that.
have been pretty, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Like that would have been pretty dangerous on its own without it being like real.
We promise we're not going to cut you in half. We're not going to cut him in half, right?
Yeah.
So we get the foreshadowing of the oxygen tank and how dangerous they are. And after Bruce eats Quint, Brody like shoves a tank in his mouth and he swims away and he's like hoping to get a lucky shot with a rifle. He's literally on a sinking ship. He's on the mast. He is parallel with the water, like basically in the water. I get all that. For some reason, this time where my suspension of disbelief was a little bit thwarted, earlier in the scene when like they're doing all the barrels and it's rapid fire, Brody's glasses gets knocked off of his face. He wears glasses the entire time in the movie. As someone who is
Hmm.
very nearsighted, I don't think I could see the shark without my glasses, let alone shoot a tank from that far away
Hmm.
with a rifle. I was like, wait a minute, you can't see shit. So just wanted to point that out. Sometimes you overthink a movie and you're like, oh, just it's fine, everything's fine.
Yep. I didn't even think about that with his glasses. I do like the little bit between Brody and Hooper when Hooper does surface and Brody doesn't tell him that Quint didn't make it, but Hooper asks about him and Brody just kind of shakes his head. And they just like paddle to sea on like the ruins of the Orca.
Yeah,
Or paddle to shore rather.
so we hope.
So we hope, yeah. There are birds. I think we're supposed to assume shore is somewhat nearby.
I guess so, yeah. So, from my understanding, some of the things Spielberg was worried about, besides all the problems, apparently, I guess two big things. The close-ups of the sharks, didn't want them to look fake, come across as fake, didn't want that to ruin the film. But then the whole second half of the movie, when they're on the boat, like they weren't really that far off land, and he was concerned of
Mhm.
catching any land on camera because he really wanted to make the men seem isolated, that they cannot just turn around and go home when things are dire. And of course, obviously, we talked about the radio smashing, so like that really kind of hammers that in.
Hmm.
But it's to also help like really make the audience root for these guys, but also feel really isolated.
Yeah, I definitely watched this assuming they're just stuck way out at sea at this point.
Hmm.
By the way, my son did let me know that a shark won't eat food that isn't moving. So if you see a shark, you should play dead. And I just thought of the T-Rex in Jurassic Park. Not supposed to move, and it can't see you.
Yeah. How do you play dead in the water though? Like you have to tread,
You just,
right? I guess float.
you could float.
That seems scary. I don't know. What
I don't
about
know.
you?
My son's in swim lessons and they have to learn how to like do the back float, so maybe just back float.
I have yet to see Duel, which is another Spielberg movie. I think his first one outside of his first one where he like kind of wrote and directed himself.
Hmm.
And apparently it's very similar to this movie, just not with a shark. I
Okay.
guess it's just basically, you see a mostly unseen antagonist is stalking our hero or heroes. It's a car and like a semi truck, I believe, or like
Mm.
the front part of the semi truck. I don't know. I've never seen it, but I'm really kind of curious after talking about this movie to see what maybe kind of worked, what didn't, what he borrowed maybe
Hmm.
style wise, thematic wise from this previous car movie.
Yeah, I had never heard of this movie. That all being said, like I had no idea where Spielberg really got his start in general, so
Hmm. Well, for us, he's always has been. He's all around.
he's all around.
So besides the 4th of July, which is obviously the thematic reason for today's episode, it was also kind of considered an early and probably the first summer blockbuster to many. I guess, according to these notes here, that summer at the time was a really good time to just put a movie out that you thought wasn't going to be a big hit. They figured people were just going to be outside enjoying the weather, on vacation, being on an island, enjoying the beaches, I guess. Apparently, it was slated for Christmas release because that makes sense. Happy Jaws time on Christmas.
I think it just made sense in terms of like box office and,
Yeah,
you
of
know,
course.
like today, all the you have the Oscar bait movies coming out at Christmas and also like just the big releases they think
Yeah.
families are going to go see on break. Yeah.
But as we mentioned earlier, that they had production issues, so everything was delayed. It didn't make the Christmas release, obviously. Came out
Hmm.
middle-ish of June. And
Hmm.
apparently, like, from what I understand, numbers wise, a third of America saw it within the first couple of weeks, opening month.
Hmm.
Like, that's insane.
Yeah.
So yeah, big summer blockbuster hit. And now we have repeated that pattern for years to come.
Hmm. It's really strange to think of summer not being a big movie season at one point,
Right.
especially when I would think at this point in time, like in the 70s, more people were going to the theaters than before because you didn't necessarily have home video and whatnot. So this was your shot to see it.
This is true. Yeah.
Yeah, highest grossing film of all time until Star Wars.
Yeah. It's insane.
So we have alluded to the actor playing Quint, Robert Shaw, not getting along with Richard Dreyfuss, who played Hooper. This is apparently fact that Robert Shaw was an alcoholic. He was like drunk every day on set. The actor who played Brody had a quote that was something about him being like a perfect gentleman and a wonderful actor until he had a drink. But there was some point on set, the details are a little different depending on what you read, that he said something like, "Oh man, I really got to stop drinking," or he asked Richard Dreyfuss to give him a hand to like maybe not drink so much. And in response, Richard Dreyfuss threw the drink he was holding overboard. And this led to Robert Shaw bullying him for the rest of the shoot. In particular, he kept betting Richard Dreyfuss, or he kept telling him to climb the mast of the ship and jump into the ocean, and he would pay him like $100. And I guess at some point he was really considering doing it just to like make this all stop. And Steven Spielberg had to step in and, again, depending on the source, either told him any amount of money is not worth ruining your acting career, or any amount of money is not worth ruining my movie. Either or. But there also seems to be an agreed upon incident where Shaw tried to prank Richard Dreyfuss by spraying him in the face with a fire hose on set. And that's apparently that was like the final straw for Richard Dreyfuss. They were done with each other, didn't speak to each other a lot of the rest of the filming. Again, that actor that played Brody just kind of is like there in the middle of all this, it seems. Later, Shaw invited Dreyfus to act on stage with him, basically wanted to do Shakespeare with him. There were some quotes of like, you know, you can be the Hamlet to my whatever secondary character in Hamlet. I don't know. I don't know Hamlet well enough,
Mufasa.
but sure. Richard Dreyfuss agreed to this, that he would act on stage with him at some point, but said, give me 10 years because he wanted more acting experience under his belt because he felt like he couldn't go toe to toe with Richard Shaw. And I'm not very familiar with Richard Shaw's career, but he apparently was an extremely well respected actor, in particular, respected stage actor.
Hmm.
So, Richard Dreyfuss being a newer film actor, I could somewhat understand him maybe wanting to make sure he was up to the task. But unfortunately, Shaw died, I think, 4 years after Jaws came out.
Oh
So
wow.
this never came to pass. I did read something about that play that Shaw's son did about like the making of Jaws and like kind of the three main actors being stuck on the orca together, like filming. Apparently, his son looks almost identical to him. And he said that when he saw Richard Dreyfuss after one of the shows, Richard Dreyfuss was having trouble like speaking to him because he just looked pale, like he had seen a ghost because he looks so similar to his dad.
Whoa. That's crazy.
Yeah. Hmm.
Damn.
So yeah, again, this shoot sounds like a mess.
Sounds like a college movie.
Hmm.
So obviously Jaws was a success, dubbed summer blockbuster, made a bunch of money. What are we gonna do with that success? We're gonna make more shark movies, of course.
Of course.
And well, it was Jaws 2, Jaws 3D, because that was cool for a minute. And then Jaws the Revenge, which I believe like follows character from like Amby Island down to like Florida or something weird. Like the shark is kind of more of a menacing presence. Like the trailer should be for like Jaws 3 for Jaws the Revenge, like the devil with teeth. Like more of a that's the vibe I get with Jaws Revenge. But they
Okay.
didn't do so well, as I stated earlier when I marathoned them. Quickly, I noticed the difference in just everything. I want to say production, but maybe that's not the case because of all the problems the original had. But the
Hmm.
storytelling and the way it is told and the how, and it doesn't. It just feels like anything with a shark in it now is you have to do something different and unique, or you're just going to be compared to Jaws. And
Hmm.
obviously, the sequels, fall into that category. Apparently, Brody had to return for Jaws 2 because he signed a three-picture deal with the studio in order to be
Hmm.
cast in Jaws. What was
Yeah, he did Jaws 2, and then they put him in some other movie that had nothing to do with Jaws.
okay, I was gonna say, what was the third
Yeah.
one?
It was not another Jaws, but he and who knows how he got out of that. But yeah, he in order to be cast, he signed a three-picture deal with Universal.
Interesting.
I didn't realize those were like kind of still a thing in the 70s, but so did Jaws hold up for you?
No. Yes, very much so. I will probably watch it again soon, hopefully in theaters for their 50th anniversary release. I don't know where it's playing, but I've heard it's coming in theaters again.
Hmm.
And I don't believe I've ever seen it in theaters. I don't know if they've ever did a re-release before for one of the many anniversaries, but I'm gonna give it a go and try to catch that somewhere this summer.
Yeah, I think this would be a lot of fun to see on the big screen for sure. I did look into 50th anniversary stuff because like you, I heard that it was going to be re-released, but no real, details. There's a website called jaws50th.com. It looks like it's more of a Martha's Vineyard tourism thing, not so much associated with Universal or, re-releasing the movie. I don't know if we mentioned the movie was filmed on Martha's Vineyard, so that's why they have this claim to it. You could apparently still go see like parts of the beach where certain scenes happened, and I think the wreck of the real orca was like partially on the beach for a while and it just got vandalized and like buried in sand and whatnot. But according to this Jaws 50th website, they're having a meet and greet on Martha's Vineyard with the actor who played Alex Kintner, the boy who gets eaten by Jaws. I believe Richard Dreyfuss is the only main cast member who's even still alive.
Hmm.
And they are going to reveal, I assume, they said an orca boat reveal. So I assume they've remade it and maybe they'll have it out somewhere for people to take pictures or something.
Okay.
Um,
Okay.
I did read that tourism to Martha's Vineyard spiked after this came out, and I really would have thought that would have been the opposite.
I could see both sides of that argument. I
Hmm.
guess it depends on how scared you are of water and sharks or how much you love the movie.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess I always assumed it was like a popular vacation destination, but who knows? I did read that the author, our good old non-screenwriting author, Benchley, later became a shark conservationist because he felt very bad for like potentially helping to give sharks a bad name. There was a lot about like shark fishing spiking after Jaws came out. Just general, fear of sharks and people maybe not acting rationally if they happen to come across a shark in the wild that probably wasn't going to do anything to them. I could appreciate being scared of it though. I wouldn't really want to be like swimming and find out there's a shark right there.
Absolutely. Yeah, I totally agree.
I'm sure none of them were as big as Bruce, but still.
Yeah, I read a lot of different examples of, so yeah, the spike in tourism, but also like the spike in people hunting sharks, but also like claiming shark attacks that weren't real
Mm,
or blowing them out of proportion, stuff like that.
yeah. Which that does make sense to me. I feel like that's kind of typical after something like, especially if it's like something that did well and was as popular as this was.
Right.
I had a lot of fun rewatching this. I very much appreciated on a personal level my son's little like factoids that he had to pepper in here, but I'm excited to hopefully sometime soon like watch this entire movie with him.
Couple years.
Yeah, probably a couple of years because
50,
like
55th anniversary.
stuff. Oh man. All right. Well, we would love to hear your thoughts on Jaws as well as your own favorite summer movies. You can find us on Instagram at Back Through the Lens Pod and on Facebook at Back Through the Lens. You can also email us at backthroughthelenspodcast@gmail.com. If you're listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, please leave us a rating and review. It's the best way to support our show.
If you enjoyed our show today, please give us a like and follow for updates on new and future episodes. Our show is produced by our host, Rachel Campbell, and myself, Joe Siomek, with additional help and support from Peter Telp of LPV Productions. Peter, Rachel, and I are also the executive producers. Our awesome logo is brought to you by Tom Faraci, and our wonderful theme songs by Matt Tarek. Thanks for listening, and stay tuned for more trips into our movie watching past on Back to the Lens.
I don't want to banter.
I don't want to. You can't make me talk anymore.
Okay.
We'll continue this argument later.